Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 4 of Music Makes Everything Better. Here we are, back again with kind of the OG panel this week. So we're gonna kick it old school. I'm old and don't really know what that is, other than I'm old and went to school. So thanks for joining us, whether it's on YouTube or on SoundCloud. This is a weekly production of Music and Play where we kind of sit down and we talk about music, and you know, we poke sticks at it occasionally and it pokes back, and it's kind of fun. But it's all about making music better, making education better, making it better for the teachers, for the students, for our world. So that's what this is all about. This week, joining us again, we have Colleen Lindenbach, who is the co-owner and founder of Music and Play. Harold Squire, who's a program coordinator and an admin here at M&P. And joining us again, Kelsey Noble, our EC and private music coordinator and part-time admin and
kind of whatever else.
Yeah, whatever else comes up. Welcome to music education. It's whatever comes up. So
happens so often with music educators, actually. Yes,
it does.
It's a common theme. So I teach music and.
Yeah.
I teach music and learn how to operate Zoom and learn how to move my lessons at the last minute. And so on that, this week, private music. So I know some of you think we've been hard on private lessons, and well, I don't think it's been that so much as we've been giving the other side of music education more of a platform, which it doesn't normally get. So this week into private music for us here at Music and Play, it's a big part of what we do. So we're not saying don't come here. We'd like you to come here. And we'd like you to take private music if it's the right fit. So on that, let's get into it. What is the right fit? Who is...
It depends.
It is a big question, and that's what we're here to talk about.
That's exactly what privates can do so well, is it can be a very individualized fit for the individual needs, specific needs of a student with a specific teacher who fits those needs.
Yep.
Where it goes wrong is if you have a student who's not ready for private lessons, who's not prepared for private lessons, or a teacher who thinks, this is the way I teach, this student needs to change to be the way I want to teach. And so that the teacher isn't the right person. One teacher does not fit all, basically, is what it comes down to. In a perfect world, once the child is ready for it, or the adult in some cases is ready for it, it's great. You can move very quickly in some cases, or very slowly if you need to, because you can adjust it. And if you miss a class, you don't miss a class, unlike a group class. Whereas you miss a class, especially if it's a sequential, you run into a problem. With privates, just kind of nothing happens that week.
You don't progress as fast.
You don't progress as quickly.
Yeah. So you've all taught groups, you've all taught privates.
Yeah.
What's the right time to throw the group student out of the nest and say, here you go, you're on your own?
I think it depends on each student, because actually, so I listened to both of the group podcasts, and I was going to say,
well, that's good.
I know. Well, I figured I needed to know what we were talking about so that I could reference them.
Never stopped me. It's good.
I like to. I'm a little bit of a perfectionist that way. I type A personality. I know, yeah.
That's such a weird concept. I never would have.
And a musician.
But I think some students that we were talking that we maybe missed in the group podcast was students with additional learning needs, or those are students who, because I do have a couple of students that work much better right now in a one-on-one situation. So I think those are students who can really, really do well. And if you have a teacher who is able to accommodate for those needs, then a one-on-one situation is a wonderful spot for them to be, because they can really thrive in that environment. The other time would be, I think, if you're working towards auditions, if you're working towards exams, if you're working towards anything where you want to prepare and work on your own musical interpretation, or if you have a skill that you are really struggling with and need that one-on-one attention, those are the times where shifting to private lessons, I think, is a really good fit. It also depends on the goals that you come with.
That's the big thing for me.
And
to
having
lessons.
goals.
Yes,
Because
yeah.
that is often the problem, is it's this idea is, okay, well, my child should be, well, I guess piano. Like, he should start piano.
Yeah.
That's not a goal.
No.
No, that's a starting point.
That's a
Well,
beginning. That's a skill that you're going to, have chosen for your
Yeah.
child to learn. It doesn't happen overnight, like any skill. And if there's no goals, and I guess it's communication.
Yeah.
Because sometimes the teachers will have one idea of where they want to see the child go, and the parent has a completely other, and they're going this way.
So,
And then surprisingly enough, or not surprisingly at all,
so how do you fix? Who's right? How do you deal with it?
they're both right
Yeah.
Okay.
sometimes.
That is rarely ever possible with a goal. Yes.
It's communication.
Yeah.
That's the key, is
Yeah.
to communicate what you're looking for. Now, the difficulty can be, especially from a parent's point of view, if they have not a musical background, or frankly, even if they do, sometimes that's worse, actually, because they're stuck in their, this is the way it has to be, look. You need to find a way to talk, and frankly, that's part about the fit. Like, it's got to be the right fit for your child, but it also needs to be the right fit for the parent. If you have a teacher that you feel like you can't communicate with, that they're not hearing what you're saying, it's like, I would like my child to do, blah, 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 and the teacher nods and says yes, and then nothing ever happens towards it, well,
That goes both ways.
It does.
If you're a teacher in a group setting and you can't communicate with parents, that the group setting has this, and this planned out, it's a very curriculum-based thing, then you have a problem. If you're a private teacher who can't communicate to a teacher and say your child would be better fit for group music, or they're really excelling, or they're really struggling, you also have a problem. So yeah, it works both ways.
So you've done much more piano, and Kelsey, you and Harold, in terms of privates, have been on a different.
wind instruments.
Wind
mainly.
instruments.
Not
I've been
blood
on
string.
what I would describe as the
adventure?
outside of what we think is music education.
Ooh,
Well, hey,
In
argue
terms of
it.
numbers,
Yeah.
Argue it.
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
terms of numbers,
It's
you know,
much easier to sustain yourself
Yeah.
as a private piano teacher than it is. I mean, there's a reason I got into group teaching, because having a private flute studio, it takes a lot of time to develop that and be able to sustain that. So
Yeah.
it
Mm-hmm.
takes. I also ended up loving the groups, so
Yeah.
that's why I stayed.
which it helps, right?
Which helps, but no, I think making sure that everybody's on the same page in terms of goals. So if your goal as a parent is, I want my child to have a lifelong love and appreciation for music, that is a different goal
Yes.
than I want my child to become a concert pianist. Two very different things, right? Different approaches, different pedagogical structures. Also different attention to like how they're practicing and what they're doing with their practicing, and how hard the teacher is going to be on them for not practicing a week. Like, it's a very different approach depending on what
And in
your
some
goals
case, one of those goals is always possible.
Yes.
We can, any good teacher can instill lifelong music, and you can always want that.
Yeah.
The concert pianist, not so much so.
No, that's a different world.
But could still happen.
Oh,
absolutely.
You know, a
Absolutely.
concert pianist hopefully should have a lifelong love of music.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
that's what they're doing. It probably isn't logical that somebody just enjoying the love of music also becomes a concert pianist. That is probably less of a fit. It can still happen.
Yeah,
right.
I
But
know a
it's,
couple,
yeah. Well, no, we do, and it's,
But there are requirements for that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why I ended up not continuing in piano. I mean, I remember my teacher bemoaning, if you would just practice, Colleen, you could be a concert pianist. And I was like, yeah, whatever. I didn't. That wasn't what was important to me. Frankly, I didn't even know what that was really. And so I didn't have the habit of practice. I think that's a whole other podcast talking about practice, how to help your child, how to help yourself practice. That's a whole other thing. So I'm not going to get into that. But practice is very much a requirement for all musical instruments. I think it's actually a requirement for anything done well in life, is practice. And it's hard. There is no way. My kid doesn't want to practice. Most commonly heard thing for every private teacher.
Yeah.
Totally normal.
That's totally normal.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you quit.
No.
It means you help them learn the importance of achieving a goal through dedicated practice. And that changes your child's being, frankly. Your being. I'm working on the dedication. I'm working on my skill right now is giving thanks, being thankful for things. Because everything right now seems so
Unthankful?
unthankful, yes. And so I've actually started a gratitude journal. And it's like every day I have to write down a number of things that I'm thankful for. And it's not easy.
No.
You think, oh yeah, that's no big deal. I can do that. No, you really have to stop. So it has nothing to do with being a kid. I know we had one staff member once who literally said she bribed herself into practicing. She would, after so many minutes of practice, she could have another chocolate. I love that.
There we go. There's how we will.
Do not use food as a tool.
I also noticed those of you watching, it is still COVID time. I am thankful for masks that help us stay safe. I'm also very thankful for not wearing one right now. So we're gonna put that over there, and it'll take less of a place in the.
Not quite so prime time.
Not quite so prime time. It hasn't learned to play the piano yet. So Harold, from your point, you're teaching privately brass mainly, brass, ukulele. Like what are the secrets of success for private students in those instruments?
I think one big one that comes to mind is the fact that it doesn't have to be as sequential of a learning thing as a group lesson does.
Okay.
In a group lesson, you have to have your lesson plans built up, and you have to have this overarching plan for the whole year, and you have to do something each week, and then you're constantly building on something, and you're doing it in such a way that you know that everyone will be able to understand the first concept, and then everyone will be able to understand the second concept, so that you don't lose anybody. In a private setting, with brass specifically, if I have a student who has trouble getting into the higher register on their instrument, I can switch gears and I can focus on the lower register and focus on tone production or something different, like rhythm or whatever. I don't have to go in the same sequence that I would go through in a band setting where I'm working with brass, and I say, okay, you have to be able to play up to a G by this point, and then you have to play up to a C at the next point.
Right.
There's always potential for someone to slip through the cracks in that setting where they physically can't get to that at the same point as everyone else. And because we're in a group setting that has to be so sequentially based, I don't have the opportunity to single someone out who has that issue and say, that's okay, focus on rhythm right now.
Right.
Like they kind of get left in the dust a little bit. Okay. So a big proponent of private lessons for that is being able to specifically engineer each individual lesson to the student.
Is that similar in flute?
I'm going to disagree a little bit that it's not sequential.
Good! Okay. I like combat. This is good.
And the reason that I'm going to disagree is because you have the opportunity in private lessons if, like in flute, similar things, if tone production issues come up and everything like that, we'll work on it. However, the way that you approach and structure lessons, I can't get to how to play a G if I don't know how to make a sound on the instrument first. So it's still sequential in that you're approaching things, but you have flexibility to address whatever is coming up for the student that week. Yeah. So it's a little bit of a flexible sequential plan, and I think you still have, or at least when I go into my flute lessons with my students, I have an idea. I always have sort of an idea of what we're going to do that lesson. If something comes up and it changes, that's totally okay. I'm flexible. It's my primary instrument. I can go wherever we need to on it.
Right.
Like I can pull exercises out no matter what. But there's always an idea of where were we last week? okay, what's the next step? Is it in the piece that we're working? Are we working on a particularly difficult rhythm? Are we working on interpretation? And there's always that next step that we're going towards. So
Right.
I think that private lessons do have a sequence to them, even if we don't necessarily think about it all the time, because it's very natural to us to just go in and teach to the students' needs.
Right.
And a lot of that
Yeah.
has to do with the age.
Yes.
Oh,
I mean,
yes.
there are certain ages that you simply cannot begin certain instruments before certain ages.
For sure.
Age is a generalization because basically your size.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
You cannot give a tuba to a 4-year-old. Full size. You cannot. And they cannot.
That would be really cute. Now I'm imagining.
Yeah, I'm imagining it too. And I'm like,
Next to a
big instrument.
And I,
Sousaphone.
and I guarantee you, if we look on YouTube, we will find a 4-year-old
But, yeah.
prodigy playing tuba.
Yeah.
And a 1 in a billion
Yep.
is not the normal. And
But
thank
that's our
God if your
world.
child is normal. You don't want the prodigy. There are many other things that come with
You don't want them carrying a tuba around.
Yeah,
I mean, you really don't want to have them
lugging a tuba
around.
around.
Though they work
That's-
well as sleds in the winter. If there's a hill on the way to school.
There we go.
Hide and seek in the case too. Why not?
You never did that? You never had a student do that?
Sorry, band teachers.
If you believe the next sled marketed around the world should be tuba cases, don't
There we
let us
go.
know.
Yeah, leave us out.
So it seems like privates are much more a vehicle for a goal-driven outcome. Much as that's a little, that can be controversial and that's a little broad, but it's easier to take somebody individually through and meet those goals.
Yeah.
What about the chasm that I see, between private piano education and the expectations of private piano and the expectations of what I'll call the private rock instrument world,
Okay.
guitar, drums, bass, not so much the band instruments, but where a lot of studios make their bread and butter. They can throw a guitarist in the room, he teaches guitar, he teaches a lick.
Yeah.
They throw a drummer in the room. Again, I'm not picking on guitarists and drummers, but it is different. It's like, I want to play this song and I teach you to play this song.
It can be.
So
done that way.
what's why the difference there? Why can't
It is-
piano folks just do that? Why don't we take the other
Oh,
ones?
there are piano teachers who do that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I had a friend who taught at a studio in an unnamed city, not this one, and she was literally told by the owners, as long as the kid can play that song for recital, we don't really care what they learn. She quit.
Good for her.
Now, the problem with studios that do that, and they'll call it
Or teachers.
teachers,
do
yes,
that.
okay.
Yeah.
They'll call it in immersion teaching, or we teach differently. We just let them play the songs and teach them the song, and they learn through that. Okay, generally that's because the teachers don't know how to teach properly, and I know that's going to get hate mail, but it often is.
Often.
We used to, there's always a joke that, oh yeah, in the early 1900s, teachers were firm and they used, the rod, and there was good discipline. Okay, you know why? Because they didn't know what they were doing. They were generally scared out of their minds. They had very little training, 6 weeks during the summer. They had no other way that they knew to control a class.
Right.
So they did it. It didn't mean that they were better teachers than they were now. They're definitely not better teachers than we are now.
No.
So you can take a wonderful musician who's, guitarist, whatever, any instrument, doesn't matter, and go, okay, you want to learn this song? Here, put your hands here, do this, do this, do this. Okay, copy me. Okay, good, now do this. Okay, now copy me. No, we don't need to worry about music. You don't need to read the music. No, just listen. Well, and sometimes that's because they don't read the music.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know how to do it that way. And you come out with a child who can play one thing great, and the parents are happy, they're happy, they got what they wanted. If that's what you want, okay, I need, as an educator, to accept that and not argue it, but so that's not learning.
Not learning
because
music,
if all
anyway.
you can do is play one song.
Well, why does that matter? Why does it matter? There are tons of drum students and guitar students and pop band students and whatever that are just happy to play that. Why is that wrong?
It's not wrong. It's a different way of approaching it. So the rock world is... Okay, I'm going to sound terrible as I say this. Songs, a lot of the time in pop and rock music, you have a 4-chord song for a reason, right? So it is actually possible to create, have a meaningful relationship with music if you are playing pop, or rock, guitar, or drums, and you only need to learn a certain set of things. But if you want to expand beyond that and be able to go beyond what you've heard, there's other areas you need to learn to be able to read music, or you need to listen to things outside. Because if you're used to learning by hearing, you can only replicate what you've heard before.
Creativity's gone. Your creativity is gone.
Yeah, and
I would argue against that. But
Okay.
keep
Yeah.
going.
I think you can expand beyond that with guitar. I've seen a number of there's phenomenal guitar players who haven't taken a lesson before in their life. I think music lessons can facilitate that expansion beyond what you've heard on the radio or what you've been exposed to in your life. And I also think it's just kind of a different culture than classical music.
Yes.
I think that's the
Right.
other thing. Very different culture. And
Why does it have to be that way? Why?
Why not teach classical music that way? Or
Well, why is it different? Why is it a different culture? Why should the expectations be different?
So the example that I'm going to use is my best friend. Hi, Stumpy, if you're watching. He's a heavy metal artist. So he grew up in Winnipeg, and he was part of a number of heavy metal bands. He plays bass. He's a fantastic bass player. In that genre, at the risk of sounding completely ignorant, you don't necessarily need classical music training in that setting.
Yeah.
You need to be able to play the tunes, and you need to be able to play them well. And he was fantastic. He played in a technical death metal band. You have to know your stuff.
Yeah.
He didn't call them scales, and he didn't necessarily know that there was such a thing as keys when he started playing with me
Right,
in a different
right.
setting. But he was able to learn through that experience of what he already knew and just apply the right terminology to it. At this point, now he does know he can read chord charts and he can switch keys and he can do all of that stuff. But in his basic training for what he needed for his genre of preferred music, he didn't need the classical training. So that would be why, I would say.
So what I'm hearing is that it's limiting.
It
To
can
have
be.
a
It
it can be limiting in that you can do this
Mm-hmm.
genre, you can play in this, but because you don't know beyond, because I remember working when I was still doing musical direction with a singer who bemoaned the fact he could not read music and talked about the number of gigs he'd lost
Yes.
because he couldn't take the music and go home and learn it
Yeah.
because he didn't know how.
Exactly. But if your goal is not necessarily requiring that stuff,
Yeah.
then
Well, he was
all
a
the power to you.
professional, great
Yeah,
singer,
right.
right? But it limited his ability to do things.
It does. Yeah.
I would also say something that classical music needs to look at is being able to play by ear.
Yes.
Mhm.
Because
Yes.
that's something that gets lost that you get very, very good at in pop rock.
Yep.
Like death metal, whatever
whatever,
it is.
yeah. Yeah.
You get very good at
Tune
being
in
able
next
to play. Yeah.
Musical genres. why not?
Stumpy will be joining us, and
Yeah, because that's something that I know I have had to work on post classical
Yes,
training.
me as well.
And it is something that when I played in a pop band, I really struggled with because I needed to know what key are we in so I know what group of notes I can play with.
Yeah.
And so that's been something I've had to explore later. So I think there's benefits to both. It would be great if we could bring them together,
So-
but
That's difficult with the teachers because
Yes.
if you have
Yeah.
a teacher who's not comfortable playing by ear, they're not going to teach by ear. I got yelled at every time I played by ear. So as a child, I stopped playing by ear.
Right, yeah.
That was verboten. I didn't do it.
Yeah.
Now I work my butt off to make sure all my students do improv, all my students do composing, all my students play by ear, all my students learn to read notes. They don't learn to read by notes. I'm covering their hands and not letting them watch what they're playing until they start reading my notes. They're only taking the music. I'm getting rid of that music and making them listen and play by ear. You need both, but not all teachers are comfortable doing that.
Yeah.
Right, but so is it safe to say most piano teachers are less comfortable in improvising in that kind of open season learning, and most other private teachers, I'll go outside of the string world, which we haven't touched on, but say the rock world and that, are less comfortable going into the more formalized teaching approach?
Yeah.
As a whole, you could probably say that,
Yeah.
but yeah, I do know exceptions on both sides.
And
Yeah,
probably because the students are looking more for, I want to play a song. in that
Oh, for
form.
sure.
You know,
Yeah.
piano, strings, violin, all those things that are more formalized are more structured.
Mm-hmm.
They have become more structured because of some certain.
And yet that's why you lose private students often, is because as a teacher you get so narrow focused on this is what we do to get here, that you lose the student because they're not motivated anymore.
So how do you keep private students motivated in that? Why is sitting in a room alone with somebody you may or may not really like for half an hour, 45 minutes, an hour a week a good idea for you?
If I could use an analogy of a cookie cutter, if you have a sheet of dough, that's the student, and you as the teacher have a cookie cutter. If you are a experienced teacher in a lot of different ways, you might be able to manipulate that cookie cutter shape into a different thing, but there comes a point where you can't manipulate yourself to not remove too much of the student, and at that point you need to give it to a different cookie cutter. That's what I would say.
And how common is that?
Pretty low.
Why?
Paychecks.
Yeah, we don't pay music teachers what they're worth, I guess, frankly, is what I would argue. To become a true music teacher, you've taken at least 20 years of education specific to your instrument. What other career do you study for minimum 10 to 20 years before you're good enough to teach it? That's,
Maybe a pilot? I don't know.
no, my brother's a pilot. No.
Probably not.
No? Oh,
No,
okay.
no, I know how much. Love you,
Probably
bro.
not.
But yeah,
We might want that, and now everybody is thinking twice about flying again. But yeah,
they have to get 100 on everything, though.
Yeah. Yeah.
Also, I think a little bit of, if you don't know what your limitations are as a teacher, then you can't tell when the student's outgrown you,
That's true.
And
unless
it's-
unless the student just leaves. Like, it's a little bit of a few different things.
And the kids
I
don't
think.
want to change teachers. No one likes change.
That is
Yeah.
very true.
We see that all the time. So how do you manage the best interests of the student?
I think it's open communication.
Yeah.
I would also argue, for me, I think student-teacher relationships are really, really important and actually foundational to how you can actually teach them, because if they don't like what you're saying, they're not going to listen. But like, really,
And eventually you
So-
can help them go further, but you've
Yeah.
got to build a relationship of trust
Yeah.
before they're going to go, okay,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll try it.
And open transparency too, to say, I have this much to offer you. If you want to go beyond that, then you have to be willing to go somewhere else.
Well, and I think also
Someone else.
Someone else. Yes. Yeah.
someone else, but also I think just communicating with your student and what their goals are. And I'm kind of losing the tangent on where we started with this one, but I think making sure that, because I know we talked about parent goals and teacher goals, but like we can't forget about the students' goals,
Yes.
because what do they care about? What do
Yeah.
they want to be able to do? Are we balancing? And I think it needs to be a balance, because we don't always get to do everything we like to do, so we can't always play only the songs that we want to play. We can absolutely add those in, but balancing, is the student getting what they're looking for out of lessons with, am I providing the proper support so that they have the technical ability to be able to go off in the future and be able to learn music on their own? Kind of like, my job is to not have a job eventually. Like,
That is the job of the
that's-
teacher.
That's
Yeah.
kind of the idea.
That's your true
is-
job.
Yeah,
Like-
but not as common.
The difficulty, I think, with student goals is that most teachers, if you ask, your student, what would you like to learn? I don't know.
Yeah.
What kind of music do you listen to? I don't know.
Yeah.
And you have to really drill down with the student, and then you have to try different things. And just because they say they don't know, that means you as a teacher need to provide them different types of things. And we're not talking beginner. I mean,
No, this
you
is
know, beginner is pretty standard. There's only so many notes you play to start with, and you can still compose, you can still improv, but they don't know what they like. So if you don't try different music and listen, like private lessons can't just be about doing and play this. You have to listen to other music. I mean, I always ask my students, go home, find 2 or 3 different recordings of this song, and then come back and let's talk about them.
Right.
What do you like about this? What don't you like about this?
Yeah.
Okay, well, this one's done in this style. Or give them the recordings to listen to, because then you're working on critical thinking, and then they can start learning. Oh, well, I like to play that. That I liked. Well, they'd never heard of it before.
Right.
So how are they going to tell you they like to play that?
Right, but
they don't know
that's
what it is.
that's a dangerous outcome, though. If I come back and I say, "Hey, I think I'd really like to do this," and the teacher goes, "I'm really not that good at that. What do I do?" When you're in a studio, like this, it's easy to find another teacher.
Yeah.
If you're teaching out of your basement, if you're doing whatever, and that's the way you go, well, who do you send them to? The next basement down,
You could just take advantage and learn yourself.
Learn it yourself.
Yeah.
I was going to say,
Yeah.
the number of times the students brought something to me and I've gone, I don't know how to do that, but I can certainly find the resources and figure it out before next lesson.
Yep.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, let's explore it together. Let's figure it out. Especially because I am the only flute teacher at the studio.
Exactly.
Right?
Not
I don't
like
have
us.
another teacher to send them to.
Right.
But I don't know how to do that on my flute. Okay, let me go and find it. And let me figure out how to play jazz. Let me figure out how to do this. And then I'll come back, and even if I can only give you the basics, I can give you the basics and give you resources to then go explore on your own as well. Because I also don't think, now this is coming from me who used to go home and I would Google everything and just find whatever music I could play. But I also think it's great if your student can go home and explore something on their own.
Yes.
Allow them to do that, because that's I think where the love starts to come and they start to enjoy it, is when they're able to go and do.
Well, and if they'll communicate to that.
Yes.
Because I know most of the stuff, my teacher yelled I was never practicing. Well, I was playing every day. I just wasn't playing the stuff she gave me to play.
Me too.
Because that's not what I wanted.
Excellent. So welcome to the Color Outside the Lines panel. Not unusual.
I
if
always
you
got
notice.
it done in time, but
And that's why I try my best to, go, okay.
expand it.
Yeah, what are you listening to at home? What are you playing for fun? I mean, as a teacher, if the kid practiced or not. It doesn't
Don't
matter
really
if they
have to
marked
ask.
it down. You don't need to ask. But, if mom said, oh yeah, they were playing piano every day this week, he's like, so, what are you playing at home?
Yeah.
And then they get this deer in headlight look going. It's like, well, I know you didn't practice this. You practiced this, twice?
Yeah.
Okay,
That's-
so what were you playing all the time?
Yeah.
It's okay if you bring that in.
Yeah, I start all my lessons
And
like
I can
that.
help you with some of that. We don't have to study it. I don't want to take away that joy.
No.
Right.
Right? Because that's half the fun, is
Yeah,
learning
totally.
the stuff yourself.
Yeah.
But if you're getting frustrated with something, bring it in. I'm totally open to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do not have to stick with, oh, here's your theory book, here's your technique book, here's your, not to name any companies that spend a lot of money on, here's your repertoire, here's your studies, this is what we must do.
Right.
Why? Let's take this, let's take this. Now, does that take more work from the teacher? Absolutely.
And I would say, to come full circle, it's not applicable in a group setting for a teacher to do that. It's just there's too much other stuff that you've got to juggle.
Well, there's
So
no way
this-
to do that.
Yeah, it's frankly impossible.
Yeah.
So that is exactly the thing that a group lesson doesn't cover, but a private lesson can.
Right. So it's it builds skill in a different way. Quick kind of wrap up, lightning
Lightning round?
round.
I'm not going to give
Hit your buzzers when you know the answer. No. From each of you, one question a parent should ask a private teacher before signing up.
how long have you been teaching?
Okay.
I would say, what's your teaching philosophy?
Okay.
Good ones. I would say, to add to that, why do you play the instrument you play?
Okay. And on the other side, what is one question teachers should ask their students?
Why do you want to learn this instrument?
That one. But if I can't just like,
That's fine.
I would also say, yeah, what interested you in this, and why did you like it, and also what are your goals?
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, now I take that in a totally different way, because what I
One or
I
two
always
word
ask my
answers.
students,
All good.
how was school today?
Yeah.
I got to meet them where they're at
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
and get
So
them talking to me before I can get. If I ask them what their goal is,
Yeah.
I don't
So,
know.
and that works down the road. What is one thing you should ask your student halfway through their year of learning music?
I would ask them if that's if they want to continue down the path that we started out on, or if there's been a shift. If is there something else that you'd like to do now? Is there something that we've touched on that has piqued your interest in a way that is a little bit off tangent from where we started?
Okay.
Where can we go that will keep your goals in focus?
Yeah. What else?
Yeah, I think mine was along the lines of like, how is it going? How are you feeling about where we're at and where we're heading?
Okay. Colleen?
It's similar, but I tend to, I think maybe it's because I'm older, and I've learned general open-ended questions do not end well. Out of these three pieces, what did you like best? Which one did you like? None of them? Okay. Well, I already know my answer to where I gotta go. I gotta go someplace else.
Right.
We get to be detectives and figure out the answer to our questions using a much more concise question. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That's just years of doing it wrong.
That's
that
smart.
you learn.
I like that.
Right. And unlike groups where, you have multiple answers in a room, private music, you can get a much more defined answer and then tailor that education and that experience and that direction to what they're looking for. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that said, what the questions I'm saying, those are for more student school ages. Because I'm suddenly going, we're ignoring the adults. And of course, the adults, it's, the open-ended
Right.
questions are
Yeah.
bang on.
Well, not every adult knows either, but I think we know. So private, private has its place. Groups have its place. Rock has its place. Classical has its place. It's figuring it out, and it really comes back to the teacher.
And you can be a rock musician and have classical training.
Absolutely.
Because
Yes.
people are often surprised. I mean, you think about what Prince's training really was. Right? I was listening to a show the other day, and they had Willie Nelson's son on, and they asked him to play something. I mean, he's the type of music you expected. He played Chopin. Blew the guy out of the wires. Like, that's not what I expected. But his dad obviously had made him go, you know what? You need to learn all this in order to be so good at this, so you're not limited.
Well, I mean, Lady Gaga too.
Oh,
Yeah.
amazing
The list
musician.
Yeah.
goes on and on.
I didn't like her till I started researching what she could do. I'm like, where did she came from? I was like, oh, that's all an act. Yeah,
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
old. I
Yeah,
know, I'm old.
so teachers, private teachers, don't limit your students. I
Yeah.
think that's kind of the message, and don't limit yourselves.
Yeah.
So good discussion. That's I think we're gonna leave it there for another week of the podcast. Remember, you can listen to us on YouTube, on SoundCloud, and we'll be back. If you have any ideas or feedback, drop us a line at mpodcast@musicandplay.ca. Love to hear your feedback, good, bad, otherwise. We're not always right, but you know what? Music's not always right for everyone. There's not one answer that fits everyone. So thanks for joining, and remember, music makes everything better.